My name is Andrew Rothwell and I am 50. My career in theatre started in high school. My dad had a bit of an influence, having been involved at an amateur level, and the music teacher Debbie Appleby certainly had a big influence in getting me into theatre. So we did a whole lot of amateur productions, and New South Wales Department of Education then created an arts and theatre program. We did a series of Gilbert and Sullivan musicals as part of the Festival of Sydney, including touring our edition of Mikado to New Guinea. My first out-of-school production was a semi-professional show of A Streetcar Named Desire. It was run as a cooperative, so we all received payment after the show had finished and all expenses had been taken. I think I received, for the 8 weeks of effort, about $200. It took me about 10 months to get employment from leaving school. Lucky I had brothers and sisters that I could live with. It was quite difficult, knocking on doors, trying to get a foot in the door. To get into theatre, a lot of networking is involved. Getting to know people, and just getting your face known, that you're available, you can step in at any time. Commercial theatre from late 1984 to Les Misérables. I quit theatre at that time. I was offered a position in IT, so 4 to 5 years, a huge range of experiences. When I was working in Sydney, my main place of employment was the Theatre Royal. I worked at Hamaj as well, and a few other theatres around Sydney, bump-ins, bump-outs, Logies, that sort of thing. That period of time was probably the heyday of this generation of theatre. When Andrew Lloyd Webber stopped producing shows, theatre started to go down. My first commercial gig, well, I'll take that as the Australian Opera production of Fiddler. There was a very interesting show. That was at Her Majesty's Theatre. That was knocking on the door at the right time. I'd visited the Madge a couple of times previously, so someone had come sick and couldn't do the show. So I got my first role as a follow spot operator within the Australian Opera. Very, very memorable. Follow spot operator. There's one particular character in Fiddler on the Roof that the title of the show is taken from, and there's a piece of music he plays throughout the show, and one of the first wasn't the first scene, but one of the early scenes in the show, I missed my cue, so he was fiddling without any light. You get hit in the head by the person next to you and you just turn on and get the light on where it should be. And then apologise to the stage manager. There's a discussion afterwards and it never happens again. The next production in Her Majesty's was Camelot. And that was a worldwide production that was brought out by Richard Harris, who owned the production. Marina Prior's first commercial show. She played the lead opposite Richard Harris. That was actually amazing because I moved from lighting into sound, and I had to look after all the sound that occurred on the actors. So the microphones, miking them up before the show, having spares, hot swaps throughout the show if there was an issue with the mic. Camelot was probably one of the first shows that used body mics in Australia. So we had probably 15 microphones to move between actors throughout the show. Richard Harris's assistant who travels with the show has a tradition where they have the crew appear on stage in a scene at the final show of each city. So there's a crowd scene in Act 2, and the crowd on that night increased by about 50 people, and it mustn't happen every time because Richard Harris was quite surprised with the number. Some of them are stars and some of them are people. I certainly have an experience of Richard Harris being a star. He stopped the show one night mid-monologue, someone's mobile phone went off in the audience and he had a chat to them. It was quite dramatic that the show stopped. Camelot was his show, he owned it, he owned all the rights to it, he could do what he liked with it, and that's fine. The Madge was going dark for a while, a refit after Camelot, so we were offered to talk to the head technical people at the Theatre Royal. They crewed up cats from those people that were going to become available. Cats was just a totally different experience. It was more of an economic experience or theatre, in that the millions of dollars that were invested have to be recouped. They know how to recoup that money, so there's no artistic license whatsoever. There were 4 people that had any artistic say in the show, and everyone else had to do as they were told. So we had 5 to 7 semi-trailers arrive from Adelaide where the set was created. We had to move that into the theatre, and it was moved in a particular way so that as it came in it got set up and there was no double handling. So it was very well organised. On Cats I was part of the props team. We would set props on stage around the set and move props, hand them out during the show, assist cast members with the props or setting up for entrances. Some of the costumes they had to enter with were quite difficult. Jenny Any Dots. When she appears she has a huge coat on and she can't get set in the car boot by herself, so I had to help her into the car boot. Jeff Phillips, Rum Tum Tugger, would appear from the audience in one of his first appearances, so we had to move him from backstage to front of house with his bagpipes. I collected the boot, someone else actually threw the boot. Very dramatic scene towards the beginning of the show, huge boot. And most of these props are very heavy. I mean, the knives and forks were not aluminium. They provided weight, otherwise they wouldn't have looked right when they were being handled on stage. Problem is, when they come off, you've got 8 or 10 characters giving you knives and forks, you're not allowed to make a noise. A little show called Rocky Horror. Amazing production, amazing cast members. Russell Crowe, Reg Livermore, Daniel Abineri, and a range of Australian cast members, Australian actors that cut their teeth in Rocky Horror. It's actually quite amazing the number of names that worked through Rocky Horror. It was a very fun show to do. So, getting Russell Crowe into the fridge so he could appear as his frozen or unfrozen character. The show had zombies throughout the audience coming in. It was quite good. The whole run was fun, from rehearsals through to opening night, and then closing night's always sad, but it's a fun show. The cast and crew just get on well, and there's no standout moment because the whole time was. Rocky led to Les Misérables, which was my last show, and that was absolutely amazing. Having seen the Theatre Royal be a rubbish tip, den of debauchery, and then Paris. Just the differences that the same theatre could be made into. My role for Les Mis again was props. It was the type of role I had at the Theatre Royal, probably second in charge. That included everything from the rifles they used down to the piece of paper they carried on and off stage. There's a scene where Jean Valjean and Javert have a fight in the hospital, and I had never seen how a breakaway chair is worked. So Jean Valjean hits Javert over the head with a chair and it breaks apart. So recreating that chair every night so that it was stable enough to use as a chair, but would fall apart when hit across someone. Going into the ballroom sequence, the wedding sequence in Les Mis, all the ladies have to get changed into ball gowns. They're all hanging above stage, crosses below, and they would stand on the cross. The dresses would be lowered down in their costume. The biggest shock we had with the cast announcement for Les Mis was someone called Normie Rowe. Now, we all knew Normie Rowe as a rock singer, and he was king of pop at one time, and then he got sent to Vietnam, and that was the end of his music career. He was going to play Jean Valjean. So the crew that was a staple at Theatre Royal couldn't understand this. He was amazing, as far as I can see, and comments made by certain producers, he was one of the best Jean Valjeans worldwide. Deborah Byrne, Philip Quast, Anthony Warlow. So the cast in that production, it was a very large cast, probably at least double the size of the latest production that toured. All the way from first rehearsals through to creating the stage. Again, it came from Adelaide. That was the production house for Cameron McIntosh. And the opening night through to the party, the letter of offer, there's a whole lot of different things that just made Les Mis quite a special show. Cameron McIntosh, he is amazing. At the time, probably one of the biggest shows or biggest influences I received was from a show called Nicholas Nickleby. It's a show that actually runs over 2 days, and the presentation of that again, that was in the Theatre Royal in Sydney, just was awe-striking. The way they built the stage into the theatre, and that the audience was actually part of the stage, and the cast appeared in the audience and just slowly worked their way forward onto stage. That was very eye-opening and a big influence, and certainly cemented my want to be involved in the industry. That was before I got my first job in Sydney. Having worked in theatre, I tend to know how things can be done, and I annoy a lot of people. I haven't stopped going to theatre. I still do a lot of shows each year, and as I'm told, I geek out when I go into theatre. I like to see how they're going to do things, and then how they do shows. Some of the shows I've seen this year, the technical complexity of the shows has been amazing. The impact of theatre on my life. Well, it's made me who I am. If I hadn't been in theatre, what would I be? I don't know. It's just who I am. The influence of music and the magic of theatre has given me a very different view of the world. Very joyous.